Hey folks, I'm doing this November 2019 forecast for you here. And I'm, one second, and doing this a little bit late here for me, but I wanted to squeeze it in while I had some time today or tonight. But November 2019, we have some big shifts. Jupiter is changing signs, moving into Sagittarius. We have Mercury Retrograde cycle that's coming up, and several other things. So you want to check this out and see what's going on. So I have the chart up here. Let me bring this up. I have the so this is a chart right now for October 27th. So we're just going to run this forward, and we see that, oops, this chart here, this one. So you see this is 31st. November 1st starts. It's on Friday, November 1st, right? Let me get the hours back a little bit. Scale these hours back to be around the middle of the day. Okay, so you see that we have Jupiter is now moving into this Gandanta position. And of course, this Gandanta is the last degrees of Scorpio before the first degrees of Sagittarius. So this Jupiter going through Gandanta, I'm going to do a separate video on this, but this is a very important shift right now in between the vulnerability and stress of Scorpio and the inspiration, hope, and purpose of Sagittarius. So this Gandanta point, this one in particular, is pretty transformative, and it can show quite a bit of destruction, shifting energy, where the nakshatra and the rashi both stop, right? This nakshatra and rashi Gandanta both stopping here is very powerful. Of course, this is in all the text, this Gandanta. And of course, because the zodiac is measured with nakshatras, they point to this point where the Gandanta shifts here with these nakshatras, and of course the rashis also align here. So this is where the zodiac kind of resets. You have a fire, earth, air, water sign, and then the zodiac resets: fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. So it starts with Aries to Cancer. Then we have a Gandanta at Aslesha Mula, or I'm sorry, at Aslesha Magha. Then we have Leo to Scorpio. Then we have this Gandanta between Jeshta and Mula. Then we have the fire, earth, air, water, and then we have the Gandanta between Revati and Ashwini. So this Gandanta is where, again, the Rashi and the Nakshatra stop. And again, very clear indication of how the Sidereal astrology also was extremely important, and how we saw this played out. And so when we have this, let me put this here. And so when we have this, let me set this up. This nature of, when we have a Gandanta like this, it can definitely show a big shift happening, a lot of transformation happen. And if we run this Gandanta here, let me see. Sorry, I'm just getting my screen set up. Yeah, so if we run this Gandanta, and we run this forward, let me make the chart bigger. Do this one. And we run this forward, you'll see that that for November, this is November 4th is when it actually crosses over. November 4th or the 5th, Jupiter crosses over into Sagittarius. And then it's going through the Gandanta until about the 10th. So from now until around November the 10th, is going to be a lot of shifting. So let's say, well, it's the last degree. We're almost there now. So I would say even from now until about November the 10th, 12th, something like that, there's a lot of shifting energy around justice, equality. Again, this is also social justice, legal system, We see this playing out all over the world with politics. Often the way we see justice is like the justice system in countries and in the world. And, we just had the leader of ISIS killed, Baghdadi. Justice, a sense of justice, as Jupiter's at the end of Scorpio, right? This Gandanta shifting. We have things happening with Brexit in England and in the US, of course, with the Trump and all. I'm not going to get so into that in this video, but keep the social context in mind. So we're seeing this shift of Jupiter now, and the shifting Jupiter as really bringing a shift of justice from the Scorpio darkness, paranoia, capacity to be manipulated, and all that stuff. That's the negative Scorpio energy, toward Sagittarius, which is, again, also very much about a sense of justice, right? And seeing those things on the upswing. And, these last degrees of one sign starts to really indicate and lead into the next. So it should be very, very interesting to see, November 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, right when Jupiter actually crosses over into Sagittarius. You see that happens November 5th. That's like the first day. So after November 5th, Jupiter goes into Sagittarius, where it's going to be for the next year, right? So that's a big change that's going on. So this end of November until the first, 10 days, 10 to 12 days till around the middle of November, there's going to be big shifting from the Scorpio sense of literally like justice to a Sagittarius type. Now, again, what's been happening with Jupiter going through Scorpio is a lot of, again, very much the conspiracy theory, the hidden agenda, the things behind the scenes, the things, and we've just seen since Jupiter started going direct, a lot of these secrets exposed, a lot of exposure, a lot of the hidden corruption and all kinds of stuff has been coming out quite a bit more. And those have been real focal points. When Jupiter goes into Sagittarius, there's going to be more of a sense of literal justice, where we see rights being wronged, or no, wrongs being righted. Sorry. Sounds like rights being wronged is a lot of that, but a lot of wrongs being righted, and these dark, insidious motives being brought into the light. So watch that big shift coming up. If we continue, we're also, let me just go back a little bit as well. Oops, no, where are we at? Oh yeah, okay. I want to start where we are here at the beginning, where we are right now. Even we're starting with this Venus, Mercury, Jupiter in Scorpio. Okay, so this Venus, Mercury, Jupiter in Scorpio on starting on like the 28th, 29th, 30th is very powerful. It's called Saraswati Yoga, and that's going to be very prominent in the sky for the first part of November until Jupiter moves into Sagittarius. We're going to have Mercury, Venus, Jupiter all in the same signs, right? So again, we're starting off the month with this Saraswati Yoga, very good for creativity, higher wisdom, getting the message out, higher teachings, getting the teachings precise, correct, and really being able to recognize the truth beyond the rhetoric and the manipulation and the confusion. Again, there's a high capacity for people to really confuse teachings, especially pure teachings, pure sattvic teachings. So one of the things that's going to happen when Jupiter moves into Sagittarius, it'll be great for reestablishing the purity, the sanctity of pure teachings, instead of the confusing sort of abomination of, sattvic teachings. And again, that includes things that we could see even like in politics and in the external world, but even, in the yoga world, the astrology world and whatnot, there's a lot of these things still being grappled with. We'll see the true teachings really show themselves. And, you'll be able to really see the difference and notice the difference between the pure teachers and the good teachers and the ones that are just sort of confused again. And so a lot of these issues will be really coming out, especially when Jupiter goes into Sagittarius and gets really close to Ketu, which will be happening later in the transit. But even at the end of this month, with Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus in Scorpio, end of October, early November, this Saraswati yoga, especially about these transformative teachings, now is a great time to notice and recognize and create some deep, beautiful, transformative work, perhaps yourself, especially if you're a teacher or anything like that. Bring that stuff out. Goddess Saraswati is the sattvic, the pure sattvic, deity. And it was the daughter of Lord Brahma, and she always remained like a child. She was a child, young. So her mind was innocent and pure, but precise and clean and clear and not corrupted. So, Goddess Saraswati is also surrounded by swans, and she's, writing the Vedas and, composing music and poetry. And so all of those refined sattvic sensibilities that connect us to higher learning will be really at your disposal, starting on October 28th, October 27th, 28th. These things are prominent. It actually started, what's going on here? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it actually, started on the 28th, October 28th. You may really notice a return to the sort of purity of heart and realizing, I'm not putting into practice my teachings. I've been engaged in some sort of dark kind of behavior, not necessarily dark, hurting people, but just kind of in the darkness, in the tamas, in the confusion. So the end of October and the beginning of November really starts with this infusion of wisdom, of sattvic teachings, of purification. Okay. So again, it's also the, the beginning of Diwali, which just happened on Sunday, the 28th, on Sunday, the 27th, excuse me. It was Diwali. So it's a very sort of cleansing, healing, transformative, purifying time at the beginning of November, the end of October, the beginning of November. Really notice those, benefits. See, we got some people here. Love Mystery says, thank you for your reports. You're welcome. Jarko says, yeah, how that Gandanta is going to affect. I have my natal Mercury there. Yeah, well, if you have your natal Mercury there, Jupiter going over it will really infuse your intellect with some inspiration and hope, right? Depending on what side of the Gandanta it's on. So that transit of Jupiter is nice. Therapeutic Coaching says, nice to see you. Anandi says, how about for students in education and exams? Yeah, it's actually very good for that, especially that Saraswati yoga. Again, and the reason it's Saraswati yoga is because those three planets, Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, they're really the ones that are the givers of knowledge in life more than anything. Mercury and Jupiter are very much about, Mercury's about details, right? And curiosity, wanting to know how it works. Jupiter is about hope, optimism, the bigger picture, right? And Venus is about beauty and harmony and wanting to see the beauty of life. And, they're also quite creative. Like Mercury is very skilled. Venus, again, has an appreciation of beauty and wanting to experience joy and happiness. And again, Jupiter is then inspired by it. So these three planets together bring those energies all in one place at one time. So this is especially really powerful if you're a Scorpio person, if you have Scorpio ascendant, or if your moon is there. especially ascendant, or even if you have that in one of the trinal houses, like if you're a Pisces or Cancer, it's also quite nice. But also if you have it in angles, that's the classical Saraswati yoga, is Mercury, Jupiter, Venus in an angle, which would be either, from the side of Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio. But all of us will benefit from it because it's in the sky, and the sky is affecting all of us at the same time. So students, yeah, you'll feel inspired to want to take the exam and maybe, really be focused and really go deep, which is the nature of Scorpio. Jarko said, wow, exactly. I was thinking this mess in the yoga world first thing this morning. Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a bit of it. A lot of these dharmic teachings, it's great that these things are more popular, but as they get more popular, there's also every opportunity to kind of mess them up, even well-meaning people who are, quote, doing their thing. And all of us these days, we're doing our thing. To me, yoga is blah, blah. Well, to me, of course, is all of it all over the place in astrology as well. Well, to me, astrology is this. It's my astrology. I invented it. So I get to say anything. And it's just as legitimate as whatever anybody else says, right? You see this in all these kind of teachings, whereas the teachings are real. They actually came from a source. And of course, we have to question the source. But if the source shows that they knew what they were doing, knew what they were talking about, and we just don't want to believe it and make up what we think, that's a little different. So you see a lot of that in yoga, in astrology, in Ayurveda, in all the sacred teachings these days. So a lot of these things are getting tested now, more and more, and they should be. So we'll see that play out. The Gandanta starts to show it, but as Jupiter goes into Sagittarius and then gets closer to Ketu, it'll be even more. I've been saying this for months since Rahu went into Gemini, that those who are peddling a lot of false ideas, false notions, and filling people with a lot of false hope about these things and a lot of their own opinions substituting for dharmic teachings, it's going to be really hard to keep that stuff afloat. I said it before Rahu went into Gemini back in March. We're seeing it even more and more now. It's going to get even worse for people that are doing that. It's going to get even worse because then Jupiter's going to go into Sagittarius, which is like, now people are ready to receive the wisdom. See, what happens when these planets move, it affects our mind. As Jupiter's been in Scorpio, we're still perhaps inspired by a dark kind of conspiracy theory, or maybe they didn't understand, or it's easy to be manipulated by bad information when Jupiter is still in Scorpio, right? Because we might find some hope in some dark secret being exposed or some other motive other than just being able to get the truth, right? Jupiter goes into Sagittarius, and then you have this pure sattvic energy in this pure sattvic sign, and it's like, oh, okay. No, that makes sense. Okay, I get it now. Okay, I see what's going on. You see, these shifts shift our mind. These things shift our mind, right? And we're all having the same sort of collective ride. This is why the transits are so cool, because this is the collective energy that we're all experiencing, regardless of our individual charts. So this is why. Cheyenne Sue said, "You're so cool, Sam." That's the kind of comment I like. No, but I mean, this is why these forecasts, even though you're living your life and I'm living my life, I can say these things and we can see these shifts. And by the way, that's the main reason that I refer to things like what we see in politics and whatnot, because it's stuff that we all see. It's a collective things that we all see. We can all measure those things. It's not happening in my life. I can tell you what's happening in my life, but these are energies we can all see and feel, right? So let's get back on it. So again, this end of November, this end of October into November, we're having this Saraswati yoga, great for teachers, teaching, learning, being inspired to do that. And then Jupiter goes into Sagittarius. And again, this is the transit. You can see the date here. This is like November 4th. Jupiter's right at the edge. By November 5th, Jupiter pops in there. 6, 7, 8, 9. And you see then Jupiter starts to go further in. He passes about the 1 degree mark on about around November the 12th or so. And again, they say it's the last pada. So the padas are 2 degrees, 30 minutes. So some people extend this Gandanta much further. And so, it's, I usually take it, it's the Gandanta is the most intense, like the last minute, but you could extend it that last pada as well. Right. It's, again, up until the middle of November, from now until like the middle of November, this is why we're seeing so much change and transformation, like in the news, and every day there's some other strange, wild, crazy thing happening, So now, again, if you've been watching, Mercury has now gone retrograde. By the time we hit November 15th, Mercury's gone retrograde back, and a couple things have happened. So let's go back and check in with what went on. Okay, so Mercury then turns retrograde. I think it's the 3rd. Or no. Oh, Mercury turns retrograde before. See? Mercury's already retrograde by the time November starts. So here at the end here, Mercury's retrograde on November. Yeah, it's October 31st. So Mercury turns retrograde in Scorpio, very early Scorpio, like Anuradha, 3 degrees. So we start November with Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, and it'll be retrograde. It's about 3 weeks, so it'll be retrograde until like the 21st. So most of November we have Mercury retrograde, right? And so it's going retrograde from Scorpio into Libra. So wherever you have those houses, right? Like for me as Gemini, it's the 6th and the 5th house. So it starts in the 6th house, and then it goes retrograde back into the 5th. So that would mean for me, it's a time to really reflect on how much I'm willing to work hard for things, how much I'm willing to be of service to things. And again, there might be some confusion about that because it starts in the 6th house. And then Mercury goes retrograde back into the 5th house, which makes me reconnect and to connect with what I love and what inspires me. Because those things that inspire us, which is 5th house, are the things that we will sacrifice and work hard for, which is the 6th house. So this is why it's so important to understand how one house leads to the next. Because when you see planets retrograde from one house into the next, into the previous, you're challenged to then know how one house is the culmination of the previous house. So like if you're Leo, it's from the 3rd house. It's from the 4th house back to the 3rd house. So you would know Mercury retrograde from the 4th house is Mercury, which is details and speech and communication of the heart, learning how to put your feelings into thoughts, learning to understand the heart, learning to understand your emotional state. And then it goes retrograde back into the 3rd house, which is all of your interests, ideas, and opinions, and how those things are kind of disturbing your emotional state. So this is how you understand houses. It's very important. This is what brings nuance to all of your astrological proclamations or readings. So, but it's also, again, from Scorpio to Libra, which is a more mundane matter. It shows how your, deep and intense feelings and those things that you can't control, that you can't manage, trying to understand those things more, trying to bring more understanding and intelligence and curiosity to those things that maybe scare you, that you can't manage, especially other people. Because the biggest thing we're scared of it and that we can't manage is other people. And then Mercury goes retrograde back into Libra, which is other people and our deep, intimate connections. So on a collective way, aside from the house indicator, it's showing us us having to get more intelligent and reflect upon those things we can't control, our irrational fears, and really connect them to our relationships with others, with those relationships with others that we can't control. Because that's why Scorpio is vulnerability, because it's our intimate connections with others, intimate partners, even business partners, anything where we have an intimate contact with someone, which is Libra, we have a lot of vulnerability, which is Scorpio. So this is going to be a big focal point in November, from the beginning of November until like November 20th, as Mercury goes retrograde back into Scorpio and Libra. Okay, so the dates that are important, it's in Scorpio until November 7th, right? So Mercury's retrograde in Scorpio until November 7th. Then he turns direct on the 20th, on the 21st. Again, he's back in Libra during this whole time. Look at that. So he's back in Libra for almost a whole month, right? So he goes back into Libra for almost a whole month. During that whole month, November 7th until December 5th, we're trying to get clear about the relationship part. Then he goes back into Scorpio again, and you can be a triggered paranoid lunatic again. I'm kidding. So this is, you know, how you can read this. So this takes us, you know, up, at least the Mercury retrograde takes us back into Scorpio until, you know, he doesn't go back into Scorpio until December, right? So again, you see quite a lot of action happening here just around the beginning of November with Jupiter Gandanta changing signs, Mercury retrograde. So expect November to come in with a lot of like, whoa, again, because you have this big transition between Scorpio and Sagittarius, feeling like we're coming out of the kind of collective triggering. Again, and we can see it all over the news. Again, just to use even U.S. politics, very easy, or just politics all around the world, though. It's like fake news. No, you know, Trump is a liar. No, it's the deep state. No, it's this. And by the way, we just saw it in the news. I'm going to do a new political update because I said this stuff about 3 weeks ago, that this was what was going to happen when I talked about the, I don't remember what it was, it was a different update. I think it might have been the new moon. It was, I think, one of the new moons, but that we were going to see that Jupiter was about to go, and we're going to see, is it deep state or is it this or that, or, you know, what's going on as things like the impeachment happens in the U.S. politics, but we see it other places too. We see it in all this political intrigue now with Turkey and Russia and Syria, and also in, you know, Europe, you know, big referendum on Brexit again, and all this stuff coming to a head, where Jupiter moving from Scorpio, where it's like, I don't know, we're paranoid, we're fearful, we don't want, you know, we don't really know what to do. Sagittarius, Mercury going retrograde from Scorpio. Again, a lot of the Scorpio, you know, from Scorpio to Sagittarius and Scorpio to Libra, right? On a more personal level, we're going to feel it more in the Scorpio from the, you know, from Mercury going back into Libra. So on a more personal level, it's going to be very much a time for your personal relationships. Again, to get really clear around them with the Mercury retrograde. On a more collective level, though, we're going to be seeing in the world this backdrop of all this political chaos, all of this, all of the leaders like telling us what to believe. Again, Jupiter is what we believe, telling us what to believe, the propaganda, this or that. It's a witch hunt, it's this, it's that, whatever you want to say. So, of course, Jupiter going through Sagittarius is going to be filled with this the whole time. This is going to be big legal issues around the world with politics and whatnot, of course, as the transit continues. But a few other shifts happen here. Again, Mars moves into Libra, and you see Mars and Mercury are going to be joined. They're going to cross when we have this Mercury retrograde back into Libra. Mars and Mercury are going to cross, but Mars enters on November the 10th. Mars goes into Libra. So Mars will be in Libra for the month starting on November the 10th. So November the 10th, Mars is in Libra, which again brings that sense of, it's certainly a bit at odds with your Libra principles, which is about harmony and, you know, things like mutual respect and accommodation. Mars is like, no, I'm the important one. My needs, my desires are right. So there could definitely be some conflicts there. You see Mercury retrograde gets really close. It starts to turn direct before it gets really close by exact degree. The closest it'll get the closest to it on like, yeah, right when it stops. So it doesn't get, it's still in the same sign though. So when Mercury goes back retrograde, Mars is in Libra the whole time. And we also have, of course, the sun, the sun goes into Scorpio on the 16th of November. So November 16th, sun goes into Scorpio. November 16th. That is also, very important because the sun leaves its debilitation. It's been debilitated, for the previous month, where energy is low and we're sort of accommodating others and trying to share our power equally, when the sun is our power that needs to be acted upon with focus and drive. So you should feel a kind of resurgence in almost, like a spiritual power, spiritual courage after November 16th, when the sun goes into Scorpio. It's a good sign it's one of the best signs for the sun. I like the sun in Scorpio, of all the water signs especially, because it's ruled by Mars, but it's also, what it does is it really helps to transform those more difficult qualities of Scorpio. It's very good for the Scorpio energy, which again often hangs out in a lot of fear, unconscious fear, triggering things like, like I say, like paranoia, jealousy, darker emotions, really hang out in the Scorpio realm. And the sun is, that light within, that illuminated, that illumination, right? That illuminates those dark corners. It's like, Scorpio is related to like holes and insects and darkness. It's literally like a scorpion lives in a hole. They live in holes trying to hide. So it's kind of like a dark room. Now you can go in a dark room like a yogi. Yogis go to caves and meditate and become enlightened, right? So that's the deeper power of Scorpio. But often that's not what we're doing in Scorpio. We're like a little bug hiding, trying to get stepped on, but it's like those dark corners of our psyche that we're scared of, right? So the sun goes in and it's like turning the light on and watching all the bugs kind of scatter because the light is there. So the sun comes in and it like really illuminates our psyche and those dark corners in our psyche. So you should get a real shot in the arm there, November 16th, and then for the rest of the month, till the middle of December. So that's those are the big transits. Those are the biggest transits that are shifting in November. I'll go back. I'm sorry, this is a little asynchronous. It's not one day after the next. I'm kind of showing you the important transits, so you get a feel for when the different planets are changing signs and how that's going to work. But there's also, we want to look at the full moons because they're very important. There's a full moon on the 12th. November 12th, there's a full moon. And again, you see this full moon is going to be, Mars has gone into Libra, and it's, joined this Mercury retrograde. So the sun is in its debilitated sign, of course, joined Mercury retrograde. Mars is there, and the moon is full in Aries, right? So that's the full moon. That's opposite the new moon that we just had. And so this full moon in Aries, of course, we're going to be full of our fiery emotions, right? So it could be a pretty fiery, fired up time those couple of days before, November 10th and 11th, when the moon goes into Aries. We should feel pretty fired up at that time because Mars will have just gone into Libra. Mercury's retrograde right on the sun. And then we have this moon in Aries, very fired up, right? We even have Venus in Scorpio, which is, Scorpio, when Venus is in Scorpio, there's also, we're sort of enamored with the dark, sort of romancing the darkness. That's the way I put it. So there might be that, but again, it's also a tendency maybe to get a little triggered as well, and feel kind of vulnerable in our partnerships and in our relationships. So there's quite a few really intense things in November. Personally, quite intense with this Mercury retrograde going back into Libra, join Mars with Venus in Scorpio. Now, again, this whole time Mars is in Libra, at least through November, it'll be exchanging with Venus in Scorpio. There'll be an exchange. You go forward and see if it's the whole month. No. So until the 20th, until the 21st, Mars and Venus will be exchanging. You see, because Venus is in Scorpio ruled by Mars, and Mars is in Libra ruled by Venus. So they'll be in an exchange a lot of that time. So a lot of this even more further reinforces all this Scorpio Libra energy that I talked about earlier with the retrograde Mercury. So again, on a personal level, for most of November, there's going to be a lot of this personal sort of reckoning with, being more vulnerable and more open and more, compromising and compassionate and forgiving and bringing more equanimity and equality into your partnerships and things like that, and more, devotion and whatnot, being willing to face your insecurities and your controlling strategies, because Scorpio is where we can do a lot of stuff to kind of try to control situations and people, especially the most intimate people in our life that we can't really control. So we get into a lot of dark, negative, unconscious, triggering sort of behavior. A lot of that, the potential to be working through a lot of that in this next month. Okay. Again, I say there's a lot of potential to be working through it. Either you're working through it or it's working you. These are the energies that are going to come up. See, these are the energies that come up. So what astrology does is it shows us what the energies are and reveals our opportunity to be on the higher end of it rather than just be, triggered and bouncing off the walls and filtering all of it through our ego. Okay. So there's a lot of higher potential here, especially with those exchanges when Venus and Mars exchange, or actually when any two planets exchange, they share their energy. They cooperate, even if it's around difficult things, because Venus and Mars don't share much. They're opposites. But when they're in each other's signs, they cooperate to share the energy. But that means they're also linked together. It means they're triggering each other, and then they have to cooperate. It's like someone living in your house and you living in their house. Even if you don't like them, if they're living in your house, you have to get along. You have to agree. So come hell or high water in November, especially through about the 20th, expect your relationships and again, not just romantic relationships. Some people say, well, I'm not in one. Well, we all have relationships with other people. And especially people where we have like romantic relationships or business agreements or other things where we need their cooperation to get something done. That's really the Libra Scorpio thing, because we feel vulnerable that we have to rely on them. We have to be nice to them. They have to be nice to us. We need to feel respected, appreciated. Is it fair? Is it balanced? Am I getting what I wanted? Are you trying to rip me off? What's going on? That's the Libra Scorpio exchange. So that's going to be quite big. Let me go back and look at a few comments here. Deedam says, Saraswati Yoga is like a gift right after Diwali. Yes. Can we say Gandanta of Jupiter would complicate it a little? Well, we would not to say complicate it a little. You just interpret it, dear. You just interpret it, dear. Complicate it a little doesn't really, I don't know what that means. You just interpret that too. It's a little gift, but what is the gift? You just interpret everything. I'm saying this to Deedam because she's one of my excellent astrology students. So you interpret it like I'm interpreting it. I don't just say it's a little gift, but this is going to complicate it, because those things don't mean anything. They're just, they're not specific. So you interpret that, but yes, identifying what's going on is the first thing. We can identify it, but then you interpret it, and then it comes to life. Cherry Pie said, I give it to you. You're so talented at your job, just tuning in live. Yes, way to go, Cherry Pie. Thank you. We got a smiley face. Triggered paranoid lunatic. Oh, someone like that. Yes. Yay, it could be a month of all of our inner, triggered paranoid lunatic coming to the surface, because we all are a potentially triggered paranoid lunatic, right? Even me. Can you believe it? Oh, Jarko says that's me and me. 5 planets in Scorpio. Whoa, therapeutic coaching. That's a good thing for you to be doing, therapeutic coaching, if you have 5 planets in Scorpio. Because either you're doing that or you're doing it and nobody asked you to do it. See, this is one of the things with Scorpio and Mars energy that can get out of hand sometimes when there's a lot of planets, is we do it, we overrun other people's boundaries. Like we invade their territory with our therapy. Here's what you should do. You should do this. This is one of the things we always have to watch with Mars and the Sun. The Sun especially, but Mars also, especially if there's a lot of planets there. At best, we heal ourselves. And then all of that natural compassion of Scorpio then flows and makes you a great healer. So Scorpio is a great healing sign. Also, mainly because they also have a lot of emotional courage. They're not afraid of other people's drama. In fact, they like it. Sometimes they like it too much. Like, oh, someone's drama? Yay. Let me listen to that. Yay. I'm not afraid of that. I feel so good. At least it's someone else's drama for a change and not my own. Yay. Right? No, I'm teasing. But yeah, it's definitely a great sign for, spiritual depth, emotional depth. It's fixed water. It's, very much about stabilizing the emotions and also connecting to higher devotion as well. Nightcat says, when Jupiter goes into Sag, I will start twerking. Well, damn. Okay. Got it. Will do. Thank you very much. You're right. You're welcome, Deedham. So, all right. So let's continue immédiatement. And so, again, we have this exchange. So again, the middle, a big part of November from ending on the 20th and beginning like when Mars goes in there, which was, from the 10th to the 20th, Mars and Venus will be exchanging. So again, that's really going to bring in contrast, that intensity of Mars, Venus and Scorpio, Mars and Libra. And all that time, you see, Mercury's gone retrograde from Scorpio into Libra, and then we're getting near this full moon as well. So notice, again, I already said it, but the 10, 11, 12, these could be some pretty intense days. You watch your relationships, mark it on the calendar, do it, and watch and see what happens in your relationships around that time. 10th, 11th, 12th. Could be some, again, pretty intense times. So, a lot of transformation happens and a lot of depth, a lot of depth and power is possible because of all that energy. And the energy is really kind of neutral. It's not neutral. I mean, it's very specific things that get activated, but the source is always pure love, pure wisdom. And if you know what's coming and you know what's happening, you can bring presence into the situation. So then you're not just getting triggered by all of the karma of the planets in your mind. Because the karma is in your mind. Your mind is karma. Your mind is your tendency to feel it a certain way and have it be some emotion that hooks you, that you get trapped in, that you get stuck in, and then act the way you act in response. The higher option, which is always available, is to be present. And all of that energy, if you're present to it, is incredible amount of wisdom flowing and so many things concentrating that you get more concentrated in the moment as well. It's like a great martial artist in the midst of the fight. That's why the Bhagavad Gita takes place on the battlefield. It doesn't take place in somebody's, living room when nothing's going on. It takes place in the battlefield, full on. Everything's about to blow up. And then, because that's when the mind is the most focused, it's just, what's it focused on? Are you losing yourself in the battle, or are you the great warrior, the great martial artist who is calm and still and remembers the self? And all of that intensity is just the contrast to the silence within. All that outer drama fuels your silence and your stillness. This is why great beings take on big karmas. Again, I use my guru Amma as an example of this, because you get around Amma and it's absolute chaos. Thousands of people, and this is everything going on. Like, how could any being sit there and willingly, like, a hug and do all this stuff with these people hour after hour, day after day, 10, 15 hours at a time, surrounded by nothing but chaos? The only way that would be possible is if she was totally and 100% present and established in that thing which is untouched or unidentified with it. It doesn't mean she's not engaged. She's totally engaged. But she's not identified with the energy. So this is the spiritual, this is what all of the astrological stuff leads back to. On these lunation cycles, the reason I talk about full moons and new moons is because those are times we know when energy is going to really concentrate. It's going to, sun and moon are going to come together. They're going to, be opposite, and it's going to set up some tension between the, between the luminaries. But other times, like we had that K2 Saturn dancing back and forth all those months over the summer, was really, really intense. But during those times, you need all of your power to get through it. But then all of that power is there, and then you're not just getting through it, but should be embracing a deeper stillness and silence while it's happening. And they're both the same thing. You need the stillness and silence to get through it, and you learn so much about yourself in doing it. So that's what all this intensity really brings up. So these will be some pretty intense times. So again, I'm saying this because in your partnerships and all that, that's where we tend to lose it. That's where we lose it. We're so triggered, and we're so identified and attached, and sexuality, and there's respect, and it's all the past. Try to stay present around these times that I'm showing you here. So a few other dates to look at. I'm going to look at around the beginning here when November, hard to believe, starts off. Even the first day of November, you can see we have all these planets. Moon is joining Saturn and K2. So there's quite a bit there at the beginning, all that energy, piled up here. Mars is aspecting as well. So the beginning of the month, pretty intense as well, just looking at the moon. And again, that full moon, 10, 11, and 12, pretty intense as well. We're going to get this when the moon hits this Ardra. Again, this is like 15th and 16th, big, a lot of drama coming out. And this could be we could see some major social shifts, disclosures of data. There's so much stuff going on with politics and all this stuff in the world. These all could be some really big days where some wild and crazy stuff happened. This, especially I would say perhaps this 15th and 16th, November 15 and 16, when moon joins Rahu in Gemini, we could get some new disclosure that would come out, or some new vote, or something that really shifts the discussion. It could be pretty powerful at that time. We'll click through the rest. Anything else here I'm seeing so much? Yeah, Venus then goes into Sagittarius around the end. So it leaves Scorpio, goes into Sagittarius. We get this Venus-Jupiter very close together. This is also, when Venus-Jupiter join, it often sounds good, like, oh, Venus and Jupiter, but they're quite at odds with each other. And when we consider all this Libra and Scorpio energy, this could also, keep the fun going for a while, because Venus, it's not only that it's joined Jupiter, but it's joined Ketu and Saturn. Woo! So Venus goes from the frying pan to the fire, sort of, from Scorpio exchanging with Mars to Sagittarius joined Jupiter, the ruler, Ketu and Saturn. So again, relationships, they're just not going to feel so good for a good part of the rest of the year. Again, it doesn't mean you can't have them. We have them. But what you want to do is you want to understand what's going on and realize that the thing that we often really enjoy so much in a relationship, well, it's just like the easy sort of compromise, and it feels so good to just hang out and kiss or enjoy each other, and it's easy and fun and pleasant. It's a little harder to come by. The Scorpio exchanging with Mars, it's like, Then Sagittarius, which is quite fired up about ideals and principles with Jupiter and Saturn and Ketu. There's a lot going on, and that takes us through a big part of the rest of the year. Middle of December at least. Venus in Capricorn will never feel so good. But so I'm just looking here that, like I said, is that Venus is also going to move. So the end of the month, November 20th, Venus goes into Sagittarius, where it's joined all this pile up of planets. And then then we have a new moon. I'll just bring this new moon in Scorpio. It's going to happen on the 26th. To start this new moon cycle in Scorpio. Sun and moon come together in Scorpio. Again, this is another big time where energy concentrates very powerfully. And we start that cycle. That deep transformational Scorpio cycle starts November 26th. There you have it. So just looking at a few comments here. We have some fun being talked about, that I guess we're still into twerking here, and which is cool. And what a day to be seen by Sam. I saw you. And but I don't know who it is. It's someone who calls themselves Therapeutic Coaching. I don't have a name, so if that's good too, then that's good. You can be known as Therapeutic Coaching. So Darla Hine has a bunch of peace signs and light. What are they? Stars and kisses. Okay. I don't know who that was for. Maybe that was for Nightcat and the twerking. I don't know, because she said goodbye. Ananda Shakti said, thank you, Sam. You're welcome. So we've gone close to an hour. So I hope this was helpful. And, I have some big things to bring out in November. Waiting for the time to, bring out some big new teachings about a few things. And we'll see how it goes. Everyone should try to stay present. Presence is the biggest thing. Again, the thing to understand is anything that's in the chart, in your natal chart, and the transits in the sky, and when those things line up with dashas, and we want to get so hooked into it, and but I have this, blah blah blah, and we again, that's obviously real. You're here with karma, and that karma just means that life feels a certain way to you. It's just how life feels to you based on your past actions and your current level of intelligence. That's all it is. Based on those things, your mind and ego takes the constant, unlimited flow of God's grace and wisdom and pure power and beauty and all that, and filters it into some experience that is fragmented and confusing, and because you only get access through a certain amount of it through the ego. and that karma is what has created the ego. But the thing to understand is those things that are also very challenging also get so much of your attention that that's where you make the most progress often. But that's not the only way to make progress. You can also make progress just by doing spiritual practices and cultivating that higher relationship with, with God consciousness. And when you do that, then you create a habit of presence where everything refers back to presence, and being present is what I mean. And to me, that's the real benefit of astrology, is being able to see what's coming and understand it. And literally, because we want to know what it is. We want to understand it. At best, we want to also know how long it's going to last, but also understand that our job is really to ride the waves. And the bigger the wave, the further it takes us. So when we get these big waves of karma that come and they feel like they're going to crash and destroy us, those are also the ones that take us the furthest, like a surfer. That big wave that's coming is scary because, boy, that big wave, I might really crash. I might really fall. I might totally get destroyed by this big wave. But if you can get on that big wave and ride it, it's going to take you further than the smaller waves. So this is what great yogis do. Like I said, like my guru Amma, who's taken on, frankly, the biggest wave I've ever seen. I've never seen anyone just get in front of thousands of people every day and hug them for 15 hours straight. I don't know how anybody could do this or why they would. I mean, if a being has that much power and they can do anything, the fact that they do that is remarkable. I mean, she could do anything. She's already realized. She doesn't have to do anything. She could just come out and talk once in a while, and it would be remarkable. It would be an amazing blessing. No, she's like, no, I'm going to sit here and hug every single person for 20 hours a day and sit in the middle of this. It's an example. It's to show us what's possible. This is why, to me, she's the greatest guru I've ever seen or even ever heard of, actually, just by just by the karma alone that she takes on. Show me someone else doing that. Again, it's not to negate. It's not to negate other spiritual teachers, not by a stretch of the imagination. What I'm saying, though, is that kind of example, that's an example of like what's possible. And how many times do you think I think to myself, boy, if Amma can do that, I can get through this. If Amma can sit there and hug 10,000 people in a couple days or whatever it is, the arm hurting or face bruised, I can get through what I'm getting through, which is mainly just in my head. It's not even anything. I'm just making it up. Because this is what we do. This is really what our karma is, if we're honest. If we're honest with ourselves, our karma is just all in our head. It's just stories we have, emotions. We're attached to a story and an emotion. We think it's so interesting. It's not. It's boring. It's old. It's not boring, or it's not interesting to anyone but ourselves. It's not even interesting to ourselves. We're even bored with our own story. So spiritual practices and introducing presence is really the road. That's what yoga and the pranayama, the asana, the mantra, really getting the mind aligned, and then you can ride the wave. So we'll be riding some waves this month, and I hope this was helpful for you to hear the broadcast and share it with others. Link to it on your social media and whatnot too. I should probably say that more, but I forget. But do that as well. Okay, take care.